There we go.
Hello, everyone. Just waiting for everybody to finish connecting here. And we've got lots of people again. So nice to see. All right. I think looks like we've got everybody in. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a great week. I know it was a fair bit of information, and we touched on a lot of things last week. So this week, we're going to keep it a little bit more focused, and we're just going to talk about fats. So we've got a few more people in the waiting room there, I see. So I'm just going to pull up my slides for this week. And share these with you. Well, we get everybody in. Okay. Again, so if you have questions tonight and you'd like to participate, just raise your hand, use the raise hand button, and I can see that, and then I'll just verbally ask you. If you wanted to type your question into the chat bar, then at some point Brenda will stop me and she'll read the questions to me, and we'll do it that way like we did last week. That seemed to work pretty well. So this week we're focusing on fats, and one of the reasons that we put fats right up front is because it is such an important and such a misunderstood concept. We have been told for many decades now that fat is bad, pretty much across the board. And that's really not true. There are good fats and bad fats, and we're going to try and kind of nail down which fats we want to get out of our diet and which fats we want to get more of into our diet. And that goes an awful long way towards supporting good health, believe it or not. When we don't get enough fat, we feel really tired and exhausted. And there are many functions that your body cannot do properly. So first of all, before we, kind of get into that, how did last week go? Does anybody have any questions from last week, or want to share any successes or challenges? I'm happy to help. I know I asked you to do a fair bit last week. Gail, you got a question?
Yes, I do. I've been off wheat a long time, and I eat gluten-free bread, and I wanted to know what you thought of that. Is it bad? As bad?
Well, there's kind of two sides to that. So no, it's not bad per se. It is, if we're trying to avoid wheat, and I think, like I said last week, there are many reasons for doing that. It's a common allergen, it can increase inflammation, and it's heavily sprayed if it's not organic, which is rare to find organic bread, right? So from that point of view, yes, going with a gluten-free bread is certainly better. And a lot of people find that it's a lot easier on their digestive system, so they don't feel as bloated and maybe brain foggy as they would with the wheat one. From a blood sugar point of view, it's not very different. So, and we're gonna, not next week because we have our cooking class, but the week after that, we're gonna learn all about blood sugars. So in some ways, it's just about how you eat it. It's not that you can never have it, but just having the bread, just plain toast, for example, is probably not a good idea. Have it with some almond butter, something with some fat and some protein in it, so that it'll even out sort of that blood sugar spike that can happen with too much refined carbohydrate. And that's really the only drawback to that, is that it's a lot of refined carbohydrate, not necessarily a whole lot of nutrients. But it's not something, I hate to tell people to never do something, because if we are told that we can't ever have something, that's really what you focus on. And that's not helpful. So it's fine to have stuff like that occasionally. It just maybe not, all the time, and pay attention to what you're having it with so that your blood sugar is more even.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We're all good? Okay. Well, it sounds like you had a good week then. Either that or you're just still exhausted from, getting rid of some of the things in your diet and you're a little brain foggy. That's okay too. So this week we're going to talk about it being time for an oil change. We're going to talk about what kinds of oils you might be using in your diet, in your pantry, which ones you want to get out of there and which ones you want to put in. And I'm going to walk you through, because fat is really misunderstood, I'm going to walk you through the good fats, the bad fats, and the ones that are kind of, just okay. Because the thing about fats is that we need fat in our diet. And many, many people, and I see this especially with women, but many, many people that come to see me are not eating enough fat. They're afraid to eat fat because, we have this preconception and it's been perpetuated by the media, our medical doctors, magazines. Everything that you see or hear is about how bad fat is. And we've kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater by saying that. It's really not that simple. Fat is essential. In fact, there are essential fats that we have to get in our diet. Otherwise, normal function in the body doesn't work properly. So if you're feeling fatigued all the time, if your blood sugars are real wonky, if you have brain fog, if you've got, really dry skin, if your hair, your nails are not growing properly, if you have poor digestion, all of that can be related to not consuming enough fats. If you're in an inflammatory state, that can have to do with not having the right kinds of fats. So by the end of today, you're going to understand exactly which ones we want. So we'll talk about the harmful fats. We'll talk about fish and fish oil. That's a big, trend right now, fish oil especially in natural health circles. We'll talk about butter versus margarine. Coconut oil, is it good or is it bad? We'll talk about how to get some fats into your diet. And we'll talk about cholesterol, because one of the big questions I get when I tell people to start including more fat in their diet is, what about my cholesterol level? So we'll talk about how the body controls your cholesterol level and how we can do that naturally. So there are these different types of fats. We have saturated fat, which we often think is bad. Again, it's not that simple. We have monounsaturated fat, we have polyunsaturated fat, and then we have those essential fatty acids. So I'm going to explain what these are. And this is probably it's a very simple diagram, but it's my best diagram for explaining the difference between these types of fats. So what we have here, all fatty acids are these carbon molecules, so all those C's, attached to hydrogen molecules, with a little bit of the COOH molecule on the end, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. So every fat has this structure, this carbon backbone. This one that is diagrammed at the top here, you can see that each of these carbons is attached to 2 hydrogen atoms. That's a fully saturated fat. It has no room on that carbon chain for more hydrogen atoms. That's all that saturated fat means. A polyunsaturated fat is what's pictured at the bottom here. You can see in a number of places here, 3 in particular, the carbon atoms are attached to the neighboring carbon atom instead of to a hydrogen atom. So at those 3 spots there, where that, just going to draw this, I'm just going to highlight them here for you. At these 3 spots, why won't it highlight? Oops. Right here. This spot, and this spot. Those are called double bonds. because it's bonded twice to its neighboring carbon instead of the hydrogen atom. That double bond is what makes this polyunsaturated. So this, because it has 3, it's polyunsaturated. If it were a monounsaturated fat, it would only have 1 of those double bonds. So now we know what a saturated fat, a monounsaturated fat, and a polyunsaturated fat is. That's all that those terms mean. They are neither good nor bad. But what can happen is at these double bonds, those are damaged by light, heat, and air. So that polyunsaturated fat with those 3 double bonds is much more unstable than the saturated fat because it doesn't have any double bonds to be damaged. So think about what happens when we make so saturated fats tend to be animal products. In all foods that you see in nature, whether it be an animal product, a plant, a nut, a seed, there will be a variety of different types of fatty acids in that food. So in beef, you tend to have a lot of saturated fat, but you will have some unsaturated fatty acids as well. But the fat in beef is solid at room temperature because that's how saturated fat tends to behave, solid at room temperature. Polyunsaturated fat, on the other hand, tends to be fluid at room temperature. So the polyunsaturated fats tend to come from plant-based sources, like say sunflowers. We press sunflower seeds and make sunflower oil out of the sunflower seed, and that has, it's liquid at room temperature, and it has a fair number of these polyunsaturated fats in it. So that means that in the processing of that sunflower oil, it can easily be damaged by the light, heat, and air that it is exposed to when we extract it from that sunflower seed. So the polyunsaturated fat, it really depends how we process it, whether it is good or bad. It has the potential to be damaged. And when it is damaged and we consume that damaged fat, that's where we have problems. That's where it becomes an inflammatory fat instead of a good healing fat. So we talked last class, I think, about flaxseed. Did we discuss that? Using flaxseed? And no, okay, I was talking to somebody else on a Zoom call then. Sorry. So flaxseed has good fats in it, right? Flaxseed has omega-3 fatty acids, which is a fantastic fat. Very good for us. I'll get into that in a little bit and why it is so. But the flaxseed, if we press the oil out of the flaxseed and then we let that oil sit and we let it be exposed to the light, heat, and air, it becomes damaged, and you can actually taste it. Or if we go back to the sunflower seed, has anybody ever bitten into a rancid sunflower seed? If you have, you know you have, because it tastes horrible. It's actually gone rancid. And that's what can happen to the oils. In normal commercial processing, when we process those plant-based oils, so I'm talking things like sunflower, canola, soy, corn, those are the big ones, safflower. When we process those oils commercially, because they are polyunsaturated, in the processing themselves, you know, in order to get the most oil out of that food, that product, they're processed at high heat. And that in and of itself damages the fats. So then they taste rancid. So then they take the flavor out and you lose a whole bunch of the nutrients. And then they add a bunch of stabilizers so that it can sit on the grocery store shelf for a year and not separate, not look bad. But it doesn't taste like anything. So think about it intuitively. Sunflower oil should taste like sunflowers. But it generally doesn't taste like anything because it's been through that commercial processing. So if we are using an oil, it should taste the way that the food tasted. So your olive oil should taste like olives. It should have that strong taste. It shouldn't be neutral. Your sunflower oil should taste like sunflowers. Your flax oil should taste like flaxseed. So I'm not saying that all unsaturated fat is bad. It's just about how it's processed. So polyunsaturated fats, monounsaturated fats should be cold expeller pressed and not commercially processed. So with olive oil, you'll see that it says extra virgin olive oil. That's the first pressing. That's the one that you want. That's the one that has the most health benefits. Olive oil, by the way, is mostly monounsaturated fat. So it only has one of these double bonds. So it is relatively stable compared to a polyunsaturated fat that has 3 of these double bonds. More potential for damage. So does anybody have any questions about that so far? I am going to nail down, which types of fats we want to use and why in a minute here. But hopefully you understand a little bit more about those terms that we hear all the time, and we just tend to, attach good or bad to the term when it's not really that simple. So even within saturated fats, there are good saturated fats and there are bad saturated fats. So if we are eating the saturated fat in, let's use beef as an example again. We're eating saturated fat in beef that has been raised in a commercial feedlot, and it is fed things that cows don't normally eat. I've never in nature seen a cow munching on a cob of corn. But that's what they're fed in those feedlots. And they're fed that because it fattens them up very quickly and because it's cheap. So that commercially raised beef will have a higher percentage of fat than one that is grass-fed. And the fat will be of a different type. The grass-fed beef creates some omega-3 fatty acids, the good kind, the essential kind, and the commercially processed beef has almost none. On top of that, the poor quality feed that it is fed is full of those pesticides and herbicides that it then stores in its fat. Because like us, its liver gets overwhelmed and it can't manage those toxins, so it stores them in its fat cells in order to protect the animal. So we can have good saturated fat from the grass-fed beef, not such good saturated fat from the commercially raised one. By the same token, you get a lot of saturated fat in coconut oil. And that, because it's a stable fat, saturated fat, you can cook with it. You can heat it up and it's not going to be damaged very easily. So coconut oil would be a great one to cook with, or butter would be a great one to cook with. Okay. So one of the reasons that we need fat. This is a picture of our cell membranes. All of our cell membranes are made out of fat. These little blue balls that you see at the top, and they're white on the bottom, they should be the same color, but those are phospholipids. And then in between that, you have fatty acid tails. So everything in between this is either a fat or these little yellow molecules are cholesterol. All of our cell membranes are made out of fat. And if we don't eat the right types of fats, we make the cell membrane wrong. And if we make the cell membrane wrong, it doesn't function very well. So in the cell membrane, we have both saturated and unsaturated fats. We need a mixture of them. it is best if we eat a mixture of them. If we don't eat any saturated fat, our body can make it. If we don't eat most of the polyunsaturated fats, our body can make them. But we have to eat the essential fatty acids. So what makes a good diet is to have a variety of different fats in our diet and not just rely on one source. Now, I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying go out and, start eating spoonfuls of fat every day. That's not it at all. But if you have been avoiding fat, starting to include some of the good fats that we're going to talk about in your diet can go an awful long way towards repairing your cell membranes, repairing your metabolism, helping with brain health, helping with skin health. So what are the bad fats? The bad fats are those vegetable oils. If it is a commercially processed oil and you're looking at that bottle on the supermarket shelf and it says vegetable oil on it, or you turn over the label and it says soy, corn, canola, sunflower, safflower, those are not going to be, in general, you can get some organic cold pressed versions of those fats. But for the most part, those are commercially processed and they will be damaged vegetable oils. And when we changed over the last number of years, decades really, from using traditional fats like butter and lard and animal products, and we moved to using these vegetable oils, guess what? We gained more weight. We had more inflammatory disease. We had poorer brain health. So many things went wrong. And the dietary recommendation to avoid fat is, to quote a researcher from South Africa who has done a ton of research on this, unquestionably the worst nutritional advice of our era, of our time. So trans fats are another, huge category. Trans fats there are some very small numbers of naturally occurring trans fats that happen in animal and dairy products, and your body knows what to do with those. But most trans fats in the North American diet are made in a lab. They are made from those vegetable oils, and they are made when we try to make a vegetable oil that is liquid at room temperature act like something that is solid at room temperature. Does that sound familiar? Margarine? Trans fats are created when under heat and using a metal catalyst, they take that vegetable oil and they try to force hydrogen atoms onto it. This is a hydrogenated oil or a partially hydrogenated oil. And that's what margarine is. And we now understand that trans fats are absolutely the worst fats that we can consume. They will raise your cholesterol levels, your LDL, the bad cholesterol. They will lower your HDL. They will increase inflammation. They cause cellular misfunction. They increase the risk of heart disease quite dramatically. So we really, there are no safe levels of trans fats. And Health Canada has labeling requirements that trans fats must be on the label, but only if they're above a certain amount proportion. They have also, both in Canada and the United States, requested that food manufacturers start removing trans fats from food. So that's great. But if you are making your own foods and you're using whole natural fats that we're going to talk about tonight, you don't need to worry about trans fats. The next bad fat is the commercially refined polyunsaturated oil. So that's the one that I was talking about with the sunflower oil. That's my example, but it could be anything. It could be soy oil or corn oil or, the Becel oil that you see on the shelves. This is refined, it's heated, it's chemically extracted. There's some of those chemicals that remain in it. It gets oxidized, which means damaged. It's deodorized, and then it's preserved to make it shelf stable. And when we consume that, it causes inflammation. It becomes an inflammatory fat. Your body goes, wow, I don't know what that is, and starts to attack. Inflammation goes up, and your cell membranes, when they're made from that kind of fat, they don't function properly. So we don't want to use those ones either. The last category of bad fats here are too much saturated fat from those conventionally raised animals. So the beef, the chicken, the egg, the dairy that has been raised and is fed poor quality food. Because you've all heard the saying, you are what you eat. Well, the cow is what it eats, and the chicken is what it eats as well. So just being further up the food chain, we further up bioaccumulate some of those poor quality fats, poor quality toxins that are in that poor quality or poorly raised food. And I'm not saying you can't have any saturated fat. That's not true at all. We just want to pay attention to the quality. Good fats. So these are the ones that we want to get into our diet. So our oil change is getting the bad fats out of our pantry and our kitchens and bringing in the good fats. So that should say extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is the first pressing. It is, because it's monounsaturated and only has that one double bond, it's actually quite stable. There's been a lot of confusion about olive oil in the last few years, whether you can heat it or not. Extra virgin olive oil you actually can heat. And a good rule of thumb is that if it starts to smoke, you're damaging the fat. So you can saute with olive oil, just keep it below the smoke point. Don't let it get that hot. Another tip is if you want to use some, and olive oil has, I can't tell you the number of heart health benefits olive oil has. It makes the arteries more flexible, less stiff, which decreases the risk of atherosclerosis and high blood pressure. It allows for better function of the entire circulatory system. So it's a really good one to get in. And using it, if you wanted to, so stir fry is my example, because I tend to do a lot of that. If you want to stir fry with it, add a little bit of something like ghee or butter to it. And then it will take an even higher heat because you've put some more saturated fat with it. Flax oil. So flax oil is one that you want to buy in very small amounts so that you use it up relatively quickly. So it has to be refrigerated. It should be sold in dark bottles, and then as soon as you open it, it goes into the refrigerator. This is one you're never going to heat, but it is an excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids. And I haven't quite got to that point yet, but those are ones that we are largely missing in our diet. We don't have a lot of them. So using it can be a great thing to do. So salad dressings, or drizzle it over vegetables, for example. I can see somebody with a hand up, but I can't see your name. I'm sorry.
Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. Can you just tell me what ghee is? I was reading that and I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
Ghee is butter that has had the milk solids removed. So it is pure fat. So you know how when you put butter in a pan, it will start to burn if you leave it long enough? That's because it's still got the milk solids and the sugar in it. And you can make ghee at home. You can buy it in the grocery store. It's commonly used in Indian cooking, but you can make it as well. You take a pound of butter and you warm it over the stove and just gently until it completely melts and it separates. And you've got that clear yellow liquid, and then you've got the whitish milk solids. You skim those off, what's left is ghee. And that ghee you can actually keep in a jar in your pantry. It doesn't even need to be refrigerated anymore. So it's a fabulous fat to cook with. And it can take that high heat. So either make it or buy it. There is, I should point out, just so you know, because it's one of my favorite things ever, there is a blend that Goodness Me sells. It's by a company called St. Francis, and it is ghee and coconut oil, virgin coconut oil, blended together. And it is so good. I have to hide it in my kitchen so that my guys don't like use it all up. It's kind of expensive, so I save it for when I'm cooking. But it's really tasty if you want to try it. And that was a good question, thanks. The next one on the list here is Udo's oil. I have a little audio recording of Udo Erasmus that I'll play for you later today. He is a researcher, and he is in nutritional circles known as, you know, the king of fats. He has done a ton of research on fats, the good, the bad. He actually wrote a book called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And he's developed this oil. And the oil is similar to flax oil. It needs to be refrigerated. It's got lots of those good polyunsaturated omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in it. And it's got kind of like flax oil, it's got a little bit of a nutty taste to it. So I use it in salad dressings. It is the one that was mentioned in your smoothie recipe, you know, to put a tablespoon of that in your smoothie as a way of getting in more of those good quality fats. But that's a great one to use as well. Coconut oil. Coconut oil, as long as it's virgin coconut oil, is a good fat. Virgin coconut oil actually has some health properties that are kind of neat. It is antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. So when we consume it, we help reduce all of that, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. It also makes a really great moisturizer for your skin. It's quite oily, so you know it's not something you necessarily want to put on and go out during the day, but overnight would be fantastic. And it can take a relatively high heat because it has a lot of saturated fat in it. It is the only plant-based oil that has a fair amount of saturated fat, so it takes a higher heat. And you know that so it should say virgin coconut oil on the label. Extra virgin is not really a thing with coconut oil. It's either virgin oil or it's not. Sometimes they say extra virgin because it's a marketing term that has been used with olive oil for so long that they want to make sure people understand. But it'll smell like coconuts. If it doesn't smell like coconuts, it's been processed a little. And then the other one that I am a huge fan of lately is avocado oil. Avocado oil is really neutral in flavor, and it can take a higher heat. So if you don't want to add that coconut flavor or the butter flavor to whatever you're wanting to cook at a high heat, avocado oil is great. It's a great one to stir fry with. If you have to, you know, I sometimes brush the barbecue grill with it. And it is a lot of monounsaturated fat as well and can take quite a high heat. So those, honestly, those are pretty much the only fats that I use. I do occasionally use a little bit of toasted sesame oil just to add a really nice flavor to things if I'm looking for something, you know, sort of Asian flavored. But other than that, those are the big ones that I use in my kitchen, and I don't feel the need to use any others. That really covers the board. And it's important too to point out that we should use, as I said earlier, a variety of these. And then we'll talk in a little bit, there are other ways to get these fats. This is just our oil change. We want to get fats from whole foods as well. Brenda?
What about hemp oil?
Hemp oil can be a great one too. Hemp is a fantastic source of omega-6 and omega-3. So treat it like flax oil. It goes into your fridge as soon as you bring it home, as soon as you open it, and you use it only in cold sources. So, you know, salad dressings or drizzle it on things. It's not one that you would heat.
Okay. And what about walnut oil, maybe in dressings? Is that a good option?
Yeah, walnuts are also, again, I would want to know that it has been properly prepared. So, you know, do a little bit of research into the company that you're buying it make sure that it's good quality. As I think I said last time, goodness me, you know, I'm happy with anything there. It can be one that you would, you know, again, use on salad oil. Yeah. It's often used too. I don't know why, but it's a good, walnuts are a good source of omega-3. And for whatever reason, walnut oil is often used in, you know, like personal care products for do-it-yourself personal care products. I'm not sure why.
Okay. I just had a personal question. I tend to follow low carb keto. And
Yep.
so there's quite a number of recipes that call for duck fat or beef tallow. You want to speak to that?
Sure. As long as the source is good, that could be, so they're both quite saturated, right? And they can be, as long as the animal has been raised properly, you know, a traditional raised duck, a traditional, which most are, a traditionally raised or grass-fed beef, then that could actually be a good source of saturated fat. We don't want to overdo it with saturated fat. We want, and it's not so much about the total amount, it's about balancing it with the essential fats and the polyunsaturated fats as well. So you don't want all your fat to come from saturated fat or all of it to come from the essential fats either. We want that mix. But both of those can be great. And I can tell you for sure that, you know, if you want to make French fries at home, French fries in duck fat are some of the nicest things I've ever eaten. They are so tasty. So there certainly can be a role to play for those things too, sure. So good saturated fats. Coconut oil, as I had said, is a great one. Butter or ghee. Ghee takes a higher heat and has, it doesn't have as much of the milk solid sugar. And full fat dairy is actually a good saturated fat as well. You know, if you're going to consume dairy, leave the fat in it. You will feel much more satiated having that full fat dairy than if you take the fat out. You know, think about how you feel after you drink a glass of skim milk or a little container of 0% yogurt. You're not satiated at all, right? You could go ahead and have another one quite easily. But try that with a full fat glass of milk or full fat yogurt, you know, maybe 4, or you can get yogurt up to 10% fat. Try that and you'll be quite satiated. Got another question, Brenda?
Yeah, just what about peanut oil?
So peanut oil, I tend to stay away from, simply because there are so many, you know, the peanut allergies have risen dramatically. So it's not one that I use. However, it does take a very high heat. So I know in Asian cooking often they'll recommend that you saute something in peanut oil. You could, you know, allergy aside, it's a possibility. Again, I'm unsure, because it's not one that I use, I'm unsure about the processing. That would be one that we'd need to look at as well. It could be damaged in that processing. Brenda, are you raising your hand there? No, Brenda, Deborah.
Yes, I was. So if with stir fries then, because that I'm finding that's one of the best ways to get all these vegetables in, which I'm struggling with. If we're not using peanut oil, what would be a good substitute for the stir fry oil?
I really like the avocado oil. But if you feel that you're good with peanut oil, then it's not the end of the world. Just look into the processing of the particular one that you're buying.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Brenda?
Just got a bit of a recap from what you were saying earlier. What is saturated fat hard for the body to break down? Just wondering, or maybe it was trans fat. Just want a clarification on that.
No, as far as breaking down these fats, that has to do with your liver function. So your liver produces bile, which when we eat a fat and it hits the first part of the small intestine, your gallbladder contracts, squirts out a bunch of bile, and that helps emulsify the fats for us. And then we have enzymes that work to break down the fats. It doesn't really matter whether it's saturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. It will do that. Your body will do that, assuming that you don't have any liver or gallbladder problems. If you do, increasing your fat intake might cause a little bit of distress. So it's not about breaking them down. It's about what your body does with them. So, and whether they're damaged or not. So as long as we get that mix and it's not damaged, we're good. Your body can manage that. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Brenda?
Yeah, I believe so. These are questions that are in the chat as well.
Oh, okay.
There's another one popped up. What about grapeseed oil? Is that good? I know our Chef Pekka tends to use it quite a bit.
Yeah, theoretically, grapeseed oil is good. It can take a high heat, but it's often poorly processed. It's often that commercially processed grapeseed oil. So if you can find cold pressed grapeseed oil, great, go for it. But otherwise, if you're buying the grapeseed oil that's in the regular supermarket, I would be suspicious of that, and I would expect that it is probably damaged. So some good monounsaturated fats. We have extra virgin olive oil, one of my favorites. Health benefits beyond just being a good fat. Avocado oil is another one that is great for cooking. And then other places to get these: whole foods. Nuts and seeds, especially in their raw form, are excellent sources of fat. And they will have a variety of these different types of fats. So macadamias are super good. Hazelnuts, pecans, almonds, Brazil nuts, cashews, go nuts on the nuts. So a portion of nuts is, sort of a small handful. If you haven't been eating a lot of fat, and I'm telling you to increase your fat, you might want to add things slowly, because it takes the digestive tract a little bit to get used to extra fat when it hasn't been having it. But these are good ways, and nuts and seeds are a fantastic way to get the good fats in. They also come with good protein and good fiber, both of which are things that we really need here too. Good polyunsaturated fats. So we can get that cold pressed flax oil. And the picture here, these are flax seeds, if you're not familiar. So that cold pressed flax oil that you keep in the fridge, you use for salad dressings, that's fabulous. Walnuts are a really good source, again, of that omega-3 fatty acid that we need, just like the flaxseed. So if you are getting flaxseed, I would suggest that you buy them whole like this and grind them yourself, either in your blender or in a coffee grinder, and then put them in an airtight container and put them in the freezer. That will preserve the fats, because remember, these polyunsaturated fats are damaged by light, heat, and air. So we don't want to buy ground flaxseed that's been sitting around in a bulk bin, for instance. That is very likely damaged. So super easy to grind yourself. Just grind them right before you use them, or you can keep them in the freezer. If you eat them whole like this, and I know, there are some whole grain breads and multigrain breads, you see the flaxseed in it, it's unlikely that we actually digest those. It's probably going all the way through your digestive tract, still intact. So the best way to get the nutrients from the flaxseed is to eat it ground. Hemp seeds, these are a fabulous one to use as well. Hemp seeds have a good mix of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. These are the two essential fats that we have to get in our diet, because we can't make them. So hemp seeds are a fabulous one to use. These ones you don't have to bother grinding. You can break these down easily in your digestive tract. Udo's oil, I had talked about earlier, and again, I'll let Udo explain it to you later on as well. Fish oil is another one that we can use. So the use of fish oil as a supplement, this is not something you're going to cook with, but the use of fish oil as a supplement has really boomed in popularity over the last 10 years or so. And the reason that people are using fish oil is because it is an excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids and their derivatives, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we can change the omega-3 fatty acids into things that are beneficial to our body. Things like DHA, which wraps around the nerves in our brain cells and our spinal cord and acts like a insulation on our wire. It is a super, super important nutrient for brain health. And EPA, which is a potent anti-inflammatory. Both of those things our body can make from omega-3 fatty acids. And by taking the fish oil, the fish has done that conversion process for us. So I'll get back to that point in a minute, but supplementing with the fish oil might be a good idea, particularly for people who have blood sugar issues or have thyroid issues. Both of those people tend to have difficulty with converting it to the necessary derivatives. And then, or just eat the fish. Fish is an excellent source of good quality fats, the omega-3 fatty acids, and that EPA and DHA. So let's talk a little bit about the essential fatty acids, since I keep talking about this, right? Essential fatty acids, we have omega-6, which is linoleic acid, and omega-3, which is alpha-linolenic acid. The names aren't really all that important. It's probably easier to remember omega-6 and omega-3. The point is, these are two types of fatty acids that our body can't make. So we have to get them from our diet. If we don't, we see pretty strong deficiency symptoms. You will see things like poor joint health, poor skin health, poor brain health, fatigue, irritability, perhaps difficulty with fertility. There's a very, very long list that covers some of the big ones. So we need to get these in our diet. And if we don't, we have misfunction. So we're going to look at each of these in detail. Brenda, got another question?
What's a good dose for fish oil? Like how much?
That's an excellent question. I would not, for most people, do more than a teaspoon of fish oil a day. Most of the brands that are good brands, so if you are looking for a good fish oil, my preference is to do it as a liquid. I know that sounds a little crazy, rather than the capsules, but I find that with the liquid, some people, one of the big complaints about fish oil is that people often find that it repeats. You know, they have this sort of burpy, fishy taste, which isn't pleasant. I actually find that happens less with the oil than it does with the capsules. And one of my favorite brands is Nutri-C. Carlson is another great one. Or you could get cod liver oil. And in any of those, I wouldn't do more than a teaspoon. That typically the manufacturers say, you know, a teaspoon is a dose. If you are struggling with a big inflammatory state, so say you have heart disease, or you're trying to get rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis under control, or you were just in an automobile accident and you have this huge amount of inflammation happening, then you can maybe double that dose for a while. But I don't think it should be long-term. It should be more than a teaspoon.
I do have another question, and I'm just going to read it. Would it be more beneficial to consume algal oil, considering the fish get the omega-3 from the algae, and then avoiding the mercury content and the microplastic consumption?
You know what? That really depends on your dietary preferences. Mercury and plastics, both of those are not really a big issue with the fish oils. Because they are all made from very small fish. They haven't been around long enough to have that, things like sardines and anchovies typically. They haven't been around long enough to have that issue. They are tested, the good ones are all tested for purity as well. But if you are a vegan, then yeah, absolutely. The algae oil would be a fantastic way to do it. The big deal with that too, though, is the algae oil is considerably more expensive than the fish oil, which is already quite expensive. So something to keep in mind, but certainly just as effective. Okay, so let's talk about omega-6. Omega-6, one of our 2 essential fatty acids, it's a precursor to these anti-inflammatory molecules. So here's where we get the anti-inflammatory benefit from the fish oil. But we get a lot of omega-6 in things like nuts or seeds. It is also a precursor to GLA. So GLA is really important for hormone production, fertility, balancing, and for joint health. We often supplement GLA for people with arthritis. And it is also a precursor to arachidonic acid, which in nutritional circles tends to get a bit of a bad rap. We talk about it as being bad because if it's too high, arachidonic acid is a precursor to an inflammatory molecule. But we need arachidonic acid. There are large amounts of arachidonic acid in the brain. So we do need undamaged omega-6 from our food. We get a lot of omega-6 in the North American diet from those processed vegetable oils, but it's all damaged and that doesn't count at all. We have to get it in its undamaged form. So good sources are nuts and seeds. Pumpkin, sesame, hemp is a fabulous source. Sprinkle those hemp seeds on salads, put it in your smoothie. Sunflowers, almonds, cashews. And then we do get some omega-6 in meat and dairy products as well. Omega-3, what are our sources, good sources of omega-3? So first of all, it is a precursor to those 2 molecules I talked about earlier, DHA and EPA. So DHA is essential for our brains. It is so important to the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, that in pregnant women, if they don't eat enough of it, baby actually steals mom's available supply. And that helps to explain, in some part, the incidence of, for some women, the incidence of postpartum depression after they give birth. EPA is an anti-inflammatory precursor. So it helps reduce inflammation for us. And when you look at the sources of omega-3, we can see why a lot of people are deficient in omega-3. They're not getting enough because we don't eat enough of these foods. There are not as many sources here. So fish oil is a great one if you want to supplement it. Otherwise, just eat the seafood. Algae oil, as somebody brought up earlier, also a good source. Dark leafy greens, lots of them. This is how the fish get it from algae, and it's how some animals make it as well. And then walnuts are also a good source. I didn't put on there, but flax, and actually let me just pop it up there. 2 other really good sources, flax seeds, and hemp seeds. Brenda.
Are the oils in pumpkin seeds damaged by roasting the seeds?
It depends on how high you roast it. So Janet has in the book, and it's one of my favorite snacks ever, toasted pumpkin seeds. You put them in a dry pan over medium heat and you just shake it until they just start to pop. And then you drizzle a little bit of olive oil on it and toss it with Herbamare. That's not going to change the fats much at all. But think about commercially roasted peanuts, for example. When we commercially roast them, they're done at a very, very high heat, and more of the fat will be damaged. So my recommendation to people is to, if you want to roast seeds, whether it be pumpkin or sunflower seeds are another good one. I like to do tamari flavored sunflower seeds or tamari almonds. Buy the raw seed, in which case the fat is protected in its whole food form because it comes with vitamin E to protect the fats. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. It protects those double bonds from being oxidated or damaged. So buy the raw seeds and then just gently roast them yourself. It's super easy to do. You can do it in a pan, you can do it in a toaster oven, and that way you control it.
Just got another one as well. Are ground crickets and other insects a good source of omegas?
I'm not sure about omegas. We use them typically for proteins. I would have to look up, they are an excellent protein source. I would have to look up whether they are a good source of fats. And I know for a lot of people that might sound really crazy and out there. I actually had a student once passing around chocolate granola in a class. And I said, oh yeah, sure, I'll try it. And I missed the whole conversation before that. But it was cricket granola. And afterwards, when I realized what I'd just eaten, I kind of went, oh, it actually wasn't bad. It wasn't whole crickets, but yeah, something different. Looking for sustainable ways for protein to feed the world, right? Okay, any other questions on the essential fatty acids, the different types of fats? Are we pretty clear on what's good to cook with, what's not, and how we want to change things up?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Oh, hi. So fish and seafood, what quantity, what portion size would you recommend eating, and how often a week, should you be eating this? Should you be putting it on the table almost every day?
I am a big fan of fish and seafood as good quality sources of both protein and fats, and I would have no problem doing it every day. However, you need to make sure that it is not somebody alluded to mercury earlier, there are some fish that are not very healthy. The unhealthy fish tend to be the larger, bigger ones that bioaccumulate toxins from the ocean and they live for a long time. So I would use, there are some apps out there that you can use to find out whether the fish that you're looking at is a good fish or a not so good fish as far as health goes. So the one that I particularly like is called Seafood Watch. It's done by the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and they rate seafoods and they'll flag it red based on not just health, and if it does have a health warning, it'll say that. It'll say, high in mercury, but also on the sustainability of the crop. So if it's in danger, it'll be a red one. And then the green ones you can eat freely. The yellow is, maybe.
Okay.
But I would, so for portion sizes, to finish answering the questions, I would say maybe, 5 ounces, 4 or 5 ounces is probably a decent portion size. It doesn't have to be huge. Mm-hmm. And I would aim for 2 or 3 times a week, but it wouldn't be a horrible thing that, you did it more often.
Okay, more sardines on the salad. Things like that.
There you go.
Sounds good.
Sardines are great ones.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is that Deborah that has a question there too?
Yeah. So with the olive oil, there are so many different brands and types of olive oil. So I get the extra virgin, but still there's a gazillion to choose from. I thought I read in the book something about the bottle, if it was translucent or if it was clear. Is that like another maybe quick indicator when you're looking at like a whole row of extra virgin olive oils to sort of steer towards, or is there another suggestion?
So think about that being damaged by light, heat, and air, right? So preferably we're not selling them in clear bottles. It should be, shaded at least. It protects it a bit from the light. Olive oil, because it's mostly monounsaturated fat, is a little bit more stable than something like flax oil. But yeah, the bottle, you know, you want to look at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just
Brenda?
a couple of questions. What about omega-9?
So omega-9, it's kind of trendy to say, 369. For example, the Udo's oil says that on the bottle. I think it says omega 369. It is not essential. Our bodies can actually make omega-9 fatty acids. As long as we get the omega-3 and the omega-6, those are the ones we're really concerned about getting in undamaged. Omega-9, if we don't eat it, there's nothing wrong with eating it, but if we don't eat it, we can make it.
And then someone asked, what about frozen haddock from Costco?
Again, look at use the app and look at where it was farmed. So if it says, and the app will tell you, if you look up haddock, it'll say, and I can't remember where haddock's typically caught. So it can be really confusing, the whole fish thing, which is why I use the app, when I'm looking things up. In general, wild caught is better than farmed, because farmed fish are often fed things that they wouldn't normally eat. Again, fish don't eat corn or grain, right? And the smaller the fish, the better. The more cold water the fish, the better. So when we're looking specifically to increase our omega-3 intake, halibut, cod, salmon, trout, sardines, anchovies, those are all really good ones. Okay, so let's look at our next little topic. So I'm going to tell you to try and get in, of those good fats that we talked about, try and get in 3 tablespoons a day. And when you think about it, 3 tablespoons is not that hard, because you can put a tablespoon in your morning smoothie. You can put a tablespoon in your salad dressing at lunch, and you might stir fry something in a tablespoon at dinner. Now, if you have been on an extremely low fat diet, you might want to gradually work up to that. But that's the goal, is to start getting at least 3 tablespoons of added fat in your diet. Now, that doesn't include the nuts and the seeds and things that you're going to use in whole foods as well. And then usually when I say, let's get in more fat in our diet, somebody says, well, what about cholesterol? So this is the thing with cholesterol. And cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, is only found in animal foods. Animals make cholesterol. So yes, if you're eating animal foods, you're increasing, you're using that duck fat that we talked about for the awesome fries, or you are, you're eating more grass-fed beef, or you're eating an egg, you're increasing your cholesterol intake. That is true. For most people, statistically, this is 999 out of 1,000, according to the researchers, Udo Erasmus. 999 people out of 1,000 can control their cholesterol level through dietary means alone. And that does not mean avoiding cholesterol. Because for those 999 people, if they eat more cholesterol, the liver makes less. If they eat less cholesterol, the liver makes more. So for most people, your cholesterol level is really about your liver and not about your cholesterol intake. There are some people who, when they eat more cholesterol, their cholesterol level in their blood goes up. That can happen. And if that's you, then maybe you want to decrease the number of animal foods and increase the number of those good quality plant foods. But the only way to know is to measure before and after. For most people, the best dietary way to raise your cholesterol is to increase your sugar intake. Sugars and starches increase insulin, which increases cholesterol. That's a much, much stronger correlation or causation than increasing your cholesterol intake. Brenda, you got a question?
Yeah, is that the same for diabetics?
For what?
Diabetics.
didn't hear you.
Diabetics.
Yes, that is the same for diabetics. And in a couple weeks, we'll talk a little bit more about we'll talk a lot about blood sugar and how to reverse that. Even for a diabetic, I'm not saying, a diabetic should go out and start eating an 8-ounce steak 3 times a day. That's not at all what I'm saying, because they will have problems with fat metabolism. But one of the strategies for reversing diabetes is to get more good quality fats in, lower the carbohydrate intake, and keep the protein at a moderate level. And that can be really, really helpful for reversing diabetes. So yeah, if you're diabetic, you need to be a little bit more careful. You still need fat in your diet. Just maybe look a little bit more towards those omega-3 and good quality omega-6. Any other questions on cholesterol? So then, butter versus margarine. Which one would you eat now? I'm hoping everybody says butter. And I do want to say one thing about this. So I talked about hydrogenation and how that damages the fats and creates trans fats, and that is absolutely not what we want to eat. And usually somebody says to me, okay, well, Becel on its label says that it's non-hydrogenated, and it has that little heart check on it. And that seems reasonable, right? Here's the problem with that. Becel is made from canola oil to start with. The canola oil is not organic. Canola is a heavily sprayed crop with glyphosate, so we have some of that chemical residue in the oil. And the oil is commercially extracted. So it is one of those ones that has been, produced under high heat, exposure to light and air. It is damaged before it is made into the margarine. And they make it into margarine not by hydrogenating it to make it solid, but by adding palm oil. And that palm oil is a saturated fat like the coconut oil, and it solidifies it more. So still not a good fat, despite the fact that they've paid for that heart check symbol. They're phasing that out now, which is fantastic, because it really didn't mean anything other than that the food manufacturer paid for it. Brenda, another question?
Yeah, just about dairy intolerance. What's your thoughts on earth balance for someone with dairy intolerance?
Yeah. I'm a little bit on the fence about the earth balance. I think it's better. It's certainly better than Becel. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked into the processing of some of the oils that go into it. What I can tell you is, even if you have a dairy intolerance, most people with a dairy intolerance do just fine with ghee, because it is just fat and none of the proteins or sugars that cause the dairy intolerance. So if you want something, and here's another trick, if you want something that is like margarine, and I had this discussion with my father for years. My mother started buying butter when I tried to explain, the problem with margarine, just as I did just now to you. And she'd use it, but he still insisted on using this Becel margarine. And it took me forever. I finally figured out why. It was because he wants it to be spreadable right from the fridge. So, and he would put it on his toast or whatever he was doing. And okay, so fine. So you know what he does now? Takes butter and mixes it half and half with flax oil. The flax oil is still liquid in the fridge. So we add that liquid to the butter and it makes the butter softer. You can sit it in the fridge in a container and it is spreadable right from the fridge. So if you're looking for, and that gets more omega-3 fats into you. So if you're looking for a good, sort of biohack, that's a great one. More questions, Brenda?
Yeah, is cold filtered milk better for you?
I'm not sure exactly what cold filtered milk means. There is raw milk and there's pasteurized milk. We can't in North America, or in Ontario anyway, Canada, we can't get raw milk. There are differences in the ways that we treat the fat in dairy products. So for instance, homogenized versus non-homogenized. And that may be where the filtering comes in. I'm not sure. In homogenized milk, what happens is we force the fat through this screen, very tiny screen. And so it breaks up the fat molecules in the milk and makes it not separate anymore. If you think old times, milk in the milk bottles and the cream all rose to the top, that's the fat, right? Now we buy homogenized milk or whole milk and it all stays homogeneous. It doesn't separate. That's the only thing I can think of with filtering. So in which case it would be better to have the non-homogenized milk, because our body recognizes those fat molecules better than it does once we break them all up.
Okay. If that didn't answer the question, then perhaps the person can just type something else in the chat to clarify.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the cold filter does. Because all milk in Canada is pasteurized, which means that it's heated to kill the bacteria. Okay, so something for you to try to start including more fats in your diet this week is Sandy's Sensational Flax Salad Dressing. It gets more of those omega-3 fats, and it's not completely it's not completely flax. It's flax and olive blended together. So flax has a little bit of a flavor that you might not be used to. So this is kind of an easy way to start getting more of the flax in and still have that taste that you might be used to with the olive oil. So any other questions right now? I am going to, if not, what I'd like to do now is play this recording of Udo Erasmus talking about fats, in particular the essential fats and why we need to get them in our diet. It's really, really fascinating and enlightening. He goes through very quickly in about 10 minutes, a grocery list of reasons why we need to get these essential fats in our diet. So it's really quite interesting. Let me just pull it up here for you.
The first building block of health in the right fat diet is essential fats.
95% of the population does not get enough of the right kind of fats to keep healthy. With fat phobia and low-fat diets on the upsweep, the problem's getting worse. In the past 20 years, we've lowered fat intake from 42% of calories to 33%, but overweight has increased from 20 to 55% of the population during that time, and health is not improving. If we lack essential fats, our body falls apart, literally. Why? Because all cells, tissues, organs, systems, and glands must have them to work. You can read the detailed story of essential fats and health in my book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, or the easy reading version, Choosing the Right Fats. The really short summary is that optimum health requires an optimum essential fat supply. We must have our essential fats. And forget about their calories. Essential fats don't make you fat. Sugars and starches do. More on that later. Essential fats increase energy, improve stamina and performance, build muscle, improve circulation, and speed recovery and healing. This holds true for athletes, performance animals, the chronically tired, those too tired to stay fit, older people, and those with degenerative conditions. Essential fats are required for growth, cell division, and hemoglobin production. They help to build strong bones. Essential fats improve brain development and brain function. They elevate mood, lift depression, improve behavior, motor coordination, vision, and the ability to learn, and increase IQ. They calm down hyperactive kids, adults, criminals, and animals, and improve how we deal with stress. Not bad for a fat. Our brain, which is 60% fat, makes us all fatheads. That's a compliment. Essential fats also make up a large part of nerves and eyes. Essential fats are nature's secret for good skin, hair, and nails. They help with eczema, psoriasis, acne, dandruff, cracked heels, and itchy skin. They help prevent hair loss, poor nail growth, dehydration, and dry skin. They replace moisturizers, creams, and lotions at a fraction of the cost of cosmetics without irritating the skin. People also tan better and burn less. Essential fats improve digestive function, protect good bowel bacteria, and enhance oil-soluble food flavors. One reason why low-fat foods taste like cardboard. Essential fats help prevent leaky gut, yeast overgrowth, bloating, and food allergies. They ease withdrawal from drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Essential fats protect us from damage by oil-soluble toxins and pesticides and help us sweat them out. Optimum intake of essential fats protects us from damage by saturated fats. Then we can eat butter, sour cream, or whipping cream in moderation without fear. Essential fats lower the glycemic index of foods, slow down glucose absorption, improve insulin function, prevent high sugar, low sugar blues, and help diabetics and hypoglycemics. Essential fats support liver, kidneys, heart, and lungs, and make hormonal glands like adrenals and thyroid work better. Essential fats are required for sperm formation and are key to women's and children's health. An unborn child draws essential fats from its mother to build its brain. As a result, women are depleted of them, and each child gets less than the preceding one. Essential fat depletion helps explain postpartum depression, behavioral and developmental problems of younger children in large families, and women's greater incidence of depression, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, collagen and inflammatory disease, and autoimmune conditions like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and others, all because of essential fat depletion. Essential fats lower high triglycerides, high blood pressure, and other cardiovascular risk factors. They decrease clot formation and the likelihood of heart attacks, strokes, and embolism, and prevent heartbeat abnormalities that can lead to cardiac arrest. One reason why low-fat diets can be dangerous. Essential fats do lower cholesterol, but water-soluble mucilage fiber, discussed later, is even more effective. In addition, essential fats can help in a host of other situations, including infections, inflammation, including joint pain, autoimmune conditions, and mineral as well as protein metabolism. Finally, essential fats help with fat reduction. Why? They increase energy, turn up calorie burning, turn up fat burning, and turn down fat production, make us feel more like being active, prevent overeating by lifting depression, reduce cravings, suppress appetite, help our kidneys dump water held in our tissues, are anti-inflammatory, and make us feel better. Proof of weight loss? 11 pounds lost in 7 days using 10 tablespoons or 140 grams daily made national radio in Norway. 80 pounds in 6 months on 3 tablespoons per day made one woman happy without media fanfare. 30 to 50 pounds in a year using 3 to 5 tablespoons is common in people who need to reduce body fat. Most overweight people avoid fats and crave bread, cakes, cookies, crackers, potatoes, corn, cereals, donuts, muffins, wheat, rye, barley, oat grain products, pasta, yams, chips, high-carb junk foods, sugar, honey, all syrups, and other sweet stuff. To reduce body fat, eat more greens, get optimum good fats and good proteins, and eat less carbs. Get more fiber, enzymes, and probiotics, take a mineral vitamin supplement, and exercise regularly. For work with essential fats, I developed an oil blend called Udo's Choice Perfected Oil Blend, or Udo's Oil, which contains 9 ingredients. Flax for omega-3 and sunflower and sesame for omega-6 essential fats. The blend is twice richer in omega-3 than omega-6. Rice and oat germ oils provide important minor ingredients. Unrefined evening primrose oil adds GLA. In addition, Udo's oil contains MCTs, the good stuff in coconut fat, GMO-free lecithin, and tocotrienol and tocopherol antioxidants. Udo's oil blend comes from organically grown seeds that are pressed, stored, and packaged at low heat under exclusion of light and oxygen. It contains all the fats that heal and no fats that kill. Keep the oil in the fridge or freeze Udo's oil for 3-year keeping. Freezing shrinks oils so the glass bottle won't break, and the 6-month shelf date printed on the bottle can then be ignored. Keep open bottles in the fridge and use within 4 to 8 weeks. We need more essential fats than oil capsules supply.
I'm going to stop it there because he just goes on to talk about the different ways that he's produced the oil, and you can get it in capsules and how much you need and the different bottle sizes. So it's a really big list that he's got there of all of the reasons we need those essential fats. And I think that could be a good, and it doesn't have to be Udo's oil. Like I said, you can get the omega-3 from flax. Hemp seeds are excellent sources, but we do need to get more of these undamaged omega-6 and omega-3 in. Deborah, you got a question?
So he was saying something about you could freeze the oil and then it lasts longer than the 6 months, but once the bottle's open, it's only good for what, 4 weeks?
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. So buy the portion size that you think you're going to use in that time period. And remember, if you're using like a tablespoon a day, if you're adding it to your smoothie, or if you're putting a tablespoon in your salad dressing, you might go through a 500 ml bottle pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the fats so far? That really wraps up my talk about fats. I have my next slide is just some snack ideas for you, because I know I took some stuff out of your diet last week. So here are some ideas for if you need snacks in between meals. But I'm happy to answer any other questions before I move on to that. And on the slide here, I just put up, he talked about the easy reading version of his textbook. It's called Choosing the Right Fats, and he's the author, Udo Erasmus. It is normally available at Goodness Me. I know with COVID and printing and things may or may not be in stock, but you can probably find that. If not, if you're interested, that's a good one to check into. Okay, so snack ideas. These are some of my favorites. Half of an avocado. If you're not familiar with Mary's, so avocado's got great fat in it. We should not be afraid of eating avocado. It will make you feel satiated. This is something that I often do for lunch when I'm stuck and or when I'm out somewhere and I haven't had time to make something, I'll grab an avocado and some Mary's crackers, and that's my lunch. And it totally satisfying. Mary's crackers are seed crackers made with different varieties of seeds and brown rice, and they are super healthy. No gluten. Celery with almond butter, an apple with almond butter. That's one of my favorite snacks. Trail mix, mix up some nuts and seeds. If you like, add a few dark chocolate chips to it. Chewy chocolate balls. I'm going to make that for you next week. Hummus and veggies. The toasted pumpkin seeds that are in the book as well are fantastic. Kale chips, you can make them yourself, you can buy them. Good way to get an extra serving of vegetables in. Really shrinks down that cup of greens. Dark chocolate, somebody asked last week, we talked about how 1 square of dark chocolate or 2 is fabulous. You want to keep it sort of above 70%. Hard-boiled egg is great. Smoothies are great. Raw nuts. So just some snack ideas for you. And again, I'll send these slides out, or Brenda will be sending them out tomorrow night for you. So you'll have all this written down. Deborah?
Just with the chocolate, of course, I keep coming back to chocolate. There's Lily's chocolate chips that are with, they're the keto chocolate chips. So it's got some other type of form of sugar in there, like it isn't sugar, but I don't know whether it's swerve or whatever it has in there. Is that, even though it's not 70%, it's like a semi-sweet, would that still be okay? Or
Yeah, I would think so. Yep. We just don't want to go crazy with it, right? But yeah, absolutely, you can have a treat. So this is how I'll leave you this week. Healthy fats help heal the body at a cellular level. So we want to eliminate those refined processed fats from the diet. So on the slides, we had those bad fats, the commercial vegetable oils, right? Concentrate on the healing fats like extra virgin olive oil, udo's oil, coconut oil, flax oil. If you eat more healthy fats, you can expect your stress level to decrease and your mood to be boosted as well. So start doing that oil change this week. If you're interested in more information about this whole topic of fats and why we ended up being told that fat is bad, fat is bad, fat is bad for decades, this book, The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Techholz, I'm not entirely sure I pronounced it right. She's an investigative journalist, and she spent years looking into why we had been told that and what happened. And it documents, as it says, how the low-fat nutrition advice of the past 60 years amounted to these uncontrolled experiments on health, and it was not a good outcome. We got heavier, more obese, more diabetes, more heart disease, more cancer, more dementias. We really do need, especially these essential fats in our diet. So let's start including more of those so that we have better health. For next week, you can, if you want to, the reading for this week was week 3, the Skinny on Fats. Next week, we're going to have a cooking class. So the 2 sections of the book that are applicable to that are week 4, Power Up with Plants, and week 6, Bring Love to the Table. So if you like, you can read those. The foods that we're going to do, so now it's going to be a live cooking class. I'm going to take you into my kitchen. My husband's going to help me with the video, and hopefully you'll be able to see me cooking, and I'll give you some tips and tricks, and we'll talk about the health benefits of some of the foods. But we're going to make 3 things. We're going to make the chewy chocolate balls that are in the book. We're going to make an avocado salad, and we're going to make the curried coconut chicken. So I am going to, or Brenda is going to, when she sends in the slides out tomorrow night, she's also going to send out a grocery list for you. And I'll have a grocery list of things that you should have available. The chicken, for instance, so there's very little prep that you need to do for this except for the chicken. The chicken for this recipe is pre-cooked. So if you have time the night before, earlier in the day, you might want to cook a chicken breast, or, if you have one of those takeout, roasted chickens, you can take chicken off of that and chop it up. And we're going to use that already cooked chicken in a very quick yummy chicken stir fry. So that's next week. Does anybody have any questions before we sign off tonight?
Just thinking that it sounds amazing. We're going to look forward to it.
All right, and it will be a lot of food. You will, you might not sound like a lot, but you'll feel like you had a lot of food. Believe me. Questions, Deborah?
I just saw somebody put in the chat something about that Facebook page, and I had actually sent something in, but it still is just waiting to be approved or something. Is that fine?
Yeah, I meant to address that. There's been a little bit of a mix-up with Goodness Me. We're tracking down the admins with the whole COVID thing and staff moving around. It kind of got dropped, and so Deborah, Brenda is looking into how to make sure that we have control of the admin again, and we can allow people in, that it's active. There are people talking on it. We just need to figure that out. So it's in the process, and we will get there, not ignoring you at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did that cover yours too, Brenda? You were
Yep, that's right.
okay. All right. Well, have a fantastic evening, everybody. Have a great week. Enjoy getting more fats into your diet. As you get those, you drop the wheat, you maybe try that trial of no dairy, maybe. Increase your vegetables. Now you can get more fat in your diet and feel a whole lot better. So we'll see how you feel next week. Have a great one. And as always, if you have any questions, you've got my email. I'm happy to answer them. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Goodbye.
thanks, Anita.
Anita.